What's up, everybody? You are on the RSJ Dynasty Dive this is episode 11, but this is the first time we're going to be diving into trade questions from outside of the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League. And this is something that, I'd kind of like I could trade talk in my sleep, I feel like. So, I'd like to do one or two of these from outside the RSJ Dynasty League, to start off every episode before we get going into whatever we're going to talk about in that given segment, because we can come up here and say you should buy low or sell high on a player, or you should take this certain strategy with your dynasty team, but when you're bringing in a trade situation, that stuff just blossoms out of that naturally, and so we'll see that as we dive in to three trades that we got here today. A couple months ago, we had the Duck on, one of RSJ's own, as he traded away arguably Dynasty's most stable, locked-in, long-term fantasy starter in Patrick Mahomes. And we had him on to talk about that. And the first trade we'll talk about today is same guy, Patrick Mahomes. And Emery, how do you feel about this one? You ready to dive in? Maybe something that we, get going more regularly here?
Yeah, I am a fan of that sort of idea, getting something, a quick little, 5-minute piece at the start of any episode there, get something going. I like that idea a lot. And this trade certainly is a doozy that we're going to be looking at right now. Pat Mahomes, like you said, is the number one asset in any Superflex league, and it's going to be that way for many, many years from now. Barring injury, Pat Mahomes will be the cream of the crop at the quarterback position, and especially in a league that values two quarterbacks like Superflex. It's just such a leg up, and so we're looking at right here, we've got our friend Cole Heinbaugh from Twitter. Thank you for reaching out. He will be giving up Pat Mahomes in turn taking in a slew of picks: DK Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, and two quarterbacks: Desmond Ridder, CJ Stroud. I know we've got his roster on the next page here, but you got to think that taking on all of that for Pat Mahomes is almost an automatic smash accept in my book, don't you think? You're getting two starting quarterbacks back as well.
Right. Yeah, and you're losing Mahomes has got to be tough no matter what, even if you're getting a boatload. Now here's a guy, right? Here's a guy who lost Tyreek, and he didn't give a shit. He went out there and balled anyway. I don't know if anything, Mahomes is the closest thing to invincible in football right now. So I've had the privilege of not really having had to think about that. I haven't had Mahomes in any of my personal leagues, so I haven't had to think about that one on a personal level and what I'd give up. So this one's an offer. This trade hasn't gone through, hasn't been accepted yet. And so I guess this is just after a startup too, so we can kind of think about, there's not really a particular direction, I guess, that these draft picks are going quite yet. So Ridder is kind of meh, you already got, so you would trade Mahomes and you would have Cousins, Stroud, and Ridder, who, we talked about in a previous episode, the NFC South is bad enough to where Desmond Ridder might, by default, have keep a starting job, even if the Falcons go 9-8. Well, they could go 9-8 and win the division, and then that's less incentive for the Falcons to get rid of him. So no matter what you think about Ridder, he really just, if he does decent, he's gonna probably have a starting job for a while. So you can kind of Ridder's not really someone, ideally, if I'm going into a contender mode, I don't really want him as my 2, but you would get him as your QB3 in this situation. And what do you think about Stroud here? Because I like Stroud.
I like Stroud too. Yeah.
I know, I had the opportunity to take Stroud when I went and traded for the 102 in the RSJ Dynasty League. Went ceiling chasing with Anthony Richardson, but like his floor is real, and I know that. And I feel like I'm still taking Stroud over Bryce Young at this point. We'll see once we're like, a month or two into the regular season how these guys are doing, even though that might be even tough because they're both on, Houston's more of a rebuilding team than I guess Carolina, even though Carolina's kind of could be in that boat too. Really, Carolina could have some struggles years, 1 and 2 with Bryce Young.
But it's the same conversation that you brought up. It's the NFC South. I mean, this year Bryce Young could go 7-10 by winning, 4 division games. It could split. They could beat Houston twice and split with New Orleans, or and then and be one game out of the mix for that division at the end of the year. He doesn't have the weight of the world on him like say Cam Newton did the last time Carolina had a franchise quarterback. I do put Stroud ahead of Bryce Young, but they're both in the same position where they're not expected to do a lot, and they're going to have decent teams around them. But yeah, and Stroud I think is going to be a starter in the league for a while. I mean, Houston has put the capital into him. They took him number 2 overall. I mean, we could talk about Trey Lance and Josh Rosen all we'd like, but to commit that pick to a quarterback means you're going to have this guy be on your roster for a while. And Kirk Cousins is going to be, if we're looking at the roster here, the side receiving all of this, Kirk Cousins is totally fine being that number 1 quarterback for a year or two.
Yeah, maybe even longer too.
Maybe you flip Ritter into first to a team where a quarterback goes down and they want to try to compete, have a low end QB2. Flip Ritter into first for a guy that goes down. Say, I don't know, maybe Tua gets hurt, Dak gets hurt. Flip something like that, then you're not missing anything with these 3 quarterbacks. And then you go, say you've taken on these assets here. CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf get plugged right in underneath Stephon Diggs. And you've got CD, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, JSN, all sitting there on your roster. I mean, outside of Stephon Diggs, the oldest guy there, CD's what, 25, 24, and DK's 25? That Chris Godwin's 27, but still, in my opinion, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but Godwin's quarterback proof in my book. I think he's had top 24 years over the past 4 years and is going to continue to do that regardless who's throwing in the ball. This sets you up. I think obviously Patrick Mahomes is like he's a weekly 25-point guy. You're hoping, right? But to take a jump from your wide receiver 2 being Chris Godwin or JSN and go slide in CeeDee Lamb right there, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, with this roster, so this is just after a startup, right? So we haven't had a season to see how things shake out.
Yeah.
So, it's probably harder to figure out who exactly is like going into contendership, who's going into rebuild, and things like that. And right now, you're probably just trading for value, because like this team could kind of go. It leans on the contender side probably because you got Mahomes. We'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor. I know he's on the PUP list right now, but I mean, Njoku could, I guess we could say Njoku could break out. He's never really had a breakout season, right? So you got Diggs and Godwin there holding it up. Burks, you kind of I think you got to wait at least another year on, maybe not, but. But Montgomery, I know we talked a little bit about him when we were talking about, kind of subjects for the show. Mm-hmm. He's like, And so he's in the Jamal Williams role. He could get a lot of points just from the goal line touches and stuff like that. He doesn't have to be terribly efficient. It's like there's a path for this team to be a contender this year. But you don't really know until you know after a startup and the team's getting in your first season, I guess, because ideally, maybe not everyone is drafting to try to be the best team that season. Maybe guys are deciding to go into a productive struggle right away. I don't know. I don't know how that startup draft went, but normally I would think like 10 out of the 12 teams, they're trying to win now and see what their team does this season. So there's a lot of unknown. And if you're going into year one just like looking for value, I think the value is unquestionable here on the 8 asset side. Because do you know off the top of your head in purely draft pick price in like first rounders, basically, maybe first rounders plus or whatever, maybe you don't really know where the first rounders are going to end up. Take first rounders and you don't know where they're going to end up. How many first rounders is Patrick Mahomes worth, off the top of your head?
So in a Superflex league, at least 3. I'm looking right now at keep trade cut. Patrick Mahomes is obviously the peak here. He is worth 9,998 whatever points they're assigning here, and a 2024 middle first round pick is worth 5,000. So keep trade cut has it at 2. He's worth 2 mid first rounders. That's straight up alone. Yeah. I'm right now. I'm putting this whole trade into the calculation.
Yeah.
But
and don't be afraid to go to. I know another one I like to at least reference. For what trade calculators are worth. I like to reference Fantasy Calc. I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Somewhat because Jackson Barrett, the guy who brings us our dynasty trade value chart every month or every week or so. He likes Fantasy Calc, so that's partially why I like it too. But I do tend to like their values definitely more than keep trade cut, which has value in it being like crowdsourced. But sometimes those get weird.
Sure,
things get weird. So what Fantasy Calc says, I think in this situation or any trade situation would be good to at least reference to. And if I had to guess, I'd say Fantasy Calc says this is kind of another no-brainer for the 8 asset side because you got 1 first and 24, 1 first and 25. CeeDee Lamb, even if Dallas's offense is set for kind of a downgrade fantasy-wise because they switched up season philosophies off of Kellen Moore. But still, CeeDee Lamb, no matter what, he's at least a first.
Mm-hmm.
DK Metcalf has been sort of an underachiever compared to like what we all kind of see in his physical attributes. Like that hasn't really translated to him being a real alpha X in Seattle. But I still kind of you might be able to still get a first, in your respective league, I think.
Yeah, I'd say in most of my leagues, he's still going to go for a first.
Yeah. Stroud's going to be at least a first. So right off the bat, that's 5. And we're talking about like floor here.
Yeah, seriously.
So we still haven't talked about Ritter in the second and the third, which is some nice to have, some really nice roster flexibility with this 8 asset side. And I think that's probably a big one too, because this one's going to give you kind of an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, and it gives you the opportunity to take DK Metcalf, and now you have DK and JSN on your team. So say if DK did, in this scenario with Seattle, I don't know how much longer Tyler Lockett is going to last before he starts declining due to age. Outliers happen, and maybe the guy goes another 3-4 years and can actually be maybe not any kind of runaway alpha on Seattle, but he can be in that conversation. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
In my head, when I think of Seattle's receiving core, I'm kind of thinking, okay, it's going to be DK and JSN and whatever pieces they might add over the next 2-3 years. But Lockett's most likely gonna fall off in the next 2-3 years. Just if you're going by normal wide receiver age apex. So if you have Metcalf and JSN, and say Metcalf even ends up producing more than JSN, that's actually a good thing for the Seahawks, I think, because we've seen JSN's talent, and if DK is out producing him, then that offense is probably doing really pretty well.
Yeah.
Right. So it gives you a little bit of security there, which I like, having DK and JSN on the same squad. And there's really is there a scenario where this trade is not a good idea to accept? Because I don't really know that there is one.
No, I can't wrap my brain around anything like that. If I saw this, yeah, I would absolutely. I would do this, maybe even without the quarterbacks in there. What do you think? You could buy a guy like Stroud for one of those firsts.
Right. So, like, worst case scenario here, Metcalf never really pans out and gets above like that mid wide receiver 2 kind of area the rest of his career. And, maybe Dallas's offense kind of gets a little chaotic, in the near future here. And maybe CeeDee Lamb gets hurt a little bit from that. It's still tough. Even without the quarterbacks, I think I got to think about that, because then that leaves you without the quarterbacks, then you're left with, I think, what was it, Kirk Cousins? I don't know if he had another quarterback on his squad. So in that particular squad, if you're taking out the quarterbacks, I might be saying no, even though that just purely value wise, it's still close.
Mm-hmm.
I am probably saying you need at least Stroud, and even if it's just Ritter and not Stroud, I think I might still say no.
Really?
Because just Mahomes is like, he's money for like another decade,
Seriously. Yeah, no, you're right. Just to go back on talking about the trade calculator here, Keep Trade Cut has to make it even. They say add a player worth 10,651 points, which is more than even Patrick Mahomes is worth.
Yeah. So add another Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, they're saying 2 Patrick Mahomes is the equal to the opposite side here.
And to be fair, the quarterbacks might be a little high right now. The rookie quarterbacks Keep Trade Cut. I think they have like Anthony Richardson is like QB9. I think Bryce Young was like 11 or 12, and Stroud 14.
Yeah.
Those might be a little high, but
it's still an interesting picture to paint,
Yeah.
According to the crowdsourced trade calculator on the internet, a fairly respected one, they're saying you're getting the value technically of 2 Patrick Mahomes in this trade.
Yeah, and on the other side, we got the side that was making the offer, which you can kind of understand why the offer was there. We don't have a bench shot for this one, but Ritter, Purdy, and Stroud as your QBs. So you would still be left with Mike Evans and Deebo Samuel, I guess, as your 1-2. Don't know the receivers behind Evans and Samuel. But yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Nick Chubb and Jerick McKinnon here. I'm not sure I would want McKinnon to be my RB2 in a dynasty league, but this is. I can't really speak to the offering side too much here because we don't really have a bench shot. I would like to see what this running back depth looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're obviously set with Kelsey until he decides to hang it up kind of right now. But I'd like to see a case for the offering side that I might like, because right now I don't really have it.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to imagine that there's at least one like rookie running back and one sort of younger wide receiver on this guy's bench that you could imagine they'd plug in as an RB3 or a flex wide receiver. Let's hope. Exactly. Yes. In a startup, you'd like to have at least 3 running backs and at least 4 wide receivers.
Yeah.
That's the hope. But then you do get the stack of Kelsey and Mahomes for the rest of Kelsey's career, and you get Mahomes for the next decade, like you had said. I think there's not. It is a lot to give up, but if you're planning on going all in and maybe flipping some old pieces down the road, it's nice to have guys that you can build around, like Kelsey. I mean, Debo's old enough, but it's not the worst position to be in. And if you want to get your guy, go get your guy. So.
Right. And normally I would say, yeah, if you want to go get your guy, again, we don't really have a look at the bench here. Like, so really wide receiver, not even wide receiver more. Like if McKinnon is actually your RB2, that kind of spells trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you trade away Metcalf and Lamb, you got Mike Evans and Deebo Samuel. Who are the 3 and 4? We don't know.
Right.
But I still just can't, unless you really went wide receiver heavy in the startup, I can't imagine your wide receiver 3 is making me feel good about trading all that to get Mahomes, because if you want Mahomes, fine, you also want to win too, right? So
yeah,
if a good solid look at the bench would have helped with that side of it. Altogether though, for Cole, who reached out to us, this seems like a lock to accept. Even hopefully the person who offered the trade, hopefully maybe even isn't watching to go, oh, I should adjust and take some pieces out of this. No, it's hit that accept button now,
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And unless you got anything else to add, we can move on to the trade number 2.
All right. Number 2 is actually one of my trades I've made in a home dynasty league. We are blurred out there, but I am Team A. Appreciate the Team A, the Team B thing here. Yeah, so this was pre-rookie draft. So this happened probably in March or April.
Mm-hmm.
We usually draft the weekend after the NFL draft. And so I picked up Chris Godwin and James Robinson, currently not rostered now, for Chase Claypool and the 110. It's a 10-man league, so this was the last pick of the first round. It ended up being Rashee Rice.
Okay. And by the way, for anyone watching, we got 3 trades we're talking about here, but if you have any trade questions, normally we don't really, we like to ask questions about roster situation and draft capital and stuff. Just more details the better when we're answering trade questions. But in a vacuum, if you like us, you got a particular trade question you'd like us to hit on at the end, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Much appreciated. So now that that's out of the way. So this is basically like Godwin for the 110, right? Or Godwin even. We could say Godwin for the 110, or we can do Godwin for the 110 first, because I don't want to do Godwin for Rashee Rice right off the bat. But
yeah, that's basically my thinking was Godwin for 110 and Claypool and Robinson were pretty much a wash to me.
Here's the post. Yeah, next time we'll have to.
Yeah, we'll break it up next time.
Particular screenshots. Another Patrick Mahomes roster. Very nice. Yeah. So looking over this again, he had the 110. Went for Godwin. Who is he? 26 or 27?
27.
27. So one of the things I was thinking about was if we go down to the draft capital, only a second rounder in 2024. And then just a first and second rounder in 2026. No 2025 draft capital. So was this already a contender?
It was a contender our first year. So in 2021, it was not a contender last year. That was,
okay.
I blew it up, traded Eckler. Eckler was basically Najee Harris and that first round pick, which the guy who I traded with ended up winning the championship. So it was I got Harris in that first rounder and some throwaway stuff for Eckler, and I moved off of Stephon Diggs for Amon-Ra. I traded Zeke somewhere in there, but picked up Najee Harris and Amon-Ra mid-season. And now this is where we're sitting.
Yeah, so this one's tough because you laid out a couple of moves that were like helping out the future type moves, right? This particular one makes the team older and takes away some future capital. So a little back and forth there. For the 110 was kind of a tough one because you got some guys there who could turn into long-term starters, but you don't really know. So it was Rashee Rice. I didn't know who the pick was. So in my mind, I'm thinking maybe you're thinking about Devon Achane or Dalton Kincaid might go there, or Kendre Miller might go around there. Like guys who right off the bat here have promising situations, as like all first-round rookies do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not really – so it was Rashee Rice. You got Rice and Tony, who's probably going to be here all the time. So even if you go Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, maybe Justin Ross comes on. It's a very unformed wide receiving core there in Kansas City. And if I'm thinking Godwin for Rashee Rice straight up, depending on my roster situation, I still might go Godwin here over Rashee Rice. Particular roster construction is really important for this one because 110 has an element of unknown to it, no matter who you're getting there. With Godwin, you know what you're getting for at least another 2-3 years. Like say it's Mike Evans and Godwin still.
Yeah.
You're getting a guy who's going to compete every year with Evans to be the top fantasy producer. Maybe not. Maybe less than standard than your half PPR or full PPR. But the other thing that was tough here with Godwin, though, is this isn't going to be Godwin with Tom Brady. This isn't even going to be Godwin, I don't think, with Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
You got a Tampa team who's going to slow down their pace of play. And so the floor is a little lower than we're used to with Godwin, I would think. Would you agree with that?
I would say to a degree, but I brought up earlier that I think Chris Godwin's going to be relatively quarterback proof. I just don't see a world where Chris Godwin doesn't get 8 to 10 to 12 targets a game, especially operating as the wide receiver, not an outside guy. And Baker, in my opinion, is usable. He's a decent enough quarterback to distribute the ball. They are going to run the ball. I don't know with who, but they're going to be bad, right? Tampa's going to be very bad.
And they're going to be worse too because Ryan Jensen's out another year, right?
Yeah. Probably took his last snap in that playoff game, but which is unfortunate because that's a huge piece of that O-line that would help Godwin because it helps Baker, helps the running backs. I just think, like I said, Chris Godwin is going to be relatively quarterback proof in my mind. And making that trade, I was mocking day in, day out because I had a couple picks in the draft, and knowing that I was at 110 meant that I was looking at Rashee Rice, Achane, Michael Mayer was another early mock position at this spot. Like in this draft, there were seven top tier guys, and then no one else knew. So what I was hoping was that I could move up a little bit. This was all pre-draft. Move up to get into those top 7 guys. That wasn't going to happen. And so I felt that to be able to get a receiver who had a solid 2 to 3 years left in an offense that values him a lot as a huge a core three of that offense there, it helps me chase the ceiling. And I think this roster right now is a lot of ceiling chasing. And I'm going to need to do that. I'm going to need to get ceilings out of a lot of these guys to compete, you know.
Mhm.
This league's a 10-man league, like I said, and we do the first week of the playoffs is 4 versus 5. We do like a play-in game style game for the playoffs. And so 1, 2, 3 all get buys into the second round, and then 4v5 is a standalone playoff game in our league. And so we, like I said, yeah, sort of like a play-in style game. So four actual teams make the playoffs. And so this team is floating right around that 5th spot. And if I get a ceiling play out of this, I can break into the top 4, hopefully, but it's going to take a lot. And you've brought up the lack of draft capital. I'm feeling that right now. You know, I shopping a lot of guys. In fairness to my competitive edge, I'm sort of glad that Judy got hurt, but he's not going on the IR because I mean I was shopping Cortland Sutton for peanuts earlier in the year. Antonio Gibson as well. You know. But I just sort of need a big bump from these guys. Would like a tight end somewhere to blow up. I mean, if you look at this tight end group that I have right here, it's disgusting. Irv Smith is starting. Then I've got Gesicki, Jake Ferguson, K-Dot, and another Tampa Bay guy, and Isaiah Likely, who I just traded for. I traded Pirine and a future third for Likely and Jaylen Warren. So,
yeah, well, you know how I feel about Gesicki and his ceiling with the Patriots and Bill O'Brien, and not afraid of Hunter Henry there. So, especially it's such a desolate position in fantasy.
Yeah,
Gesicki and Hunter Henry could see action, and they're not going to be any Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, but they don't really have to be. I don't think the way that Mike Gesicki is going to be split out wide. I even saw an article recently that was talking about they were wondering if Mike Gesicki might even get wide receiver eligibility
for a franchise tag next year.
No, just in fantasy.
Oh,
they should put him outside. So I think he's got a 63% snap rate out as a wide receiver. You know, not as a traditional tight end. So, you know, back with his college coach and Bill O'Brien. The offense has to take a step forward with Bill O'Brien compared to Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
Yeah.
Too many arrows pointing up for the Patriots offense. And I think, you know, Gesicki was even like, he was tight end 7 back in 2020.
Yeah.
You know, then Jalen Waddle showed up, then Tyreek Hill showed up, and then Mike McDaniel's tight end killing scheme showed up.
Yeah.
This thing could be totally different. And I know it's unknown, but there's so many things pointing to Gesicki's arrow pointing up. Would not be surprised if he's your starting tight end in 2023. So that's my little Gesicki rant. I'll give it every time. Dude has elite athleticism. You know, it's been brought up on a couple episodes, I think.
Right.
Yeah. By now. So with this team being in such a fluid scenario, it's a middling team, really.
Definitely, yeah.
So even with the low draft capital, you got some pieces that could, if I say Gesicki is, you know, a tight end 1, best case scenario, top 6 tight end. Yes, I said it.
I'm not outside of that frame of mind. I can theoretically see that. So
I don't think you're going to get. I don't know what's going on with the rest of Cortland Sutton's pro days here. I just don't know. I every time I think about the future of the Broncos receiving room, I feel like it's Judy and Mims. So, you know, Sutton still has some time to prove that wrong. But as far as his trade value goes, I would think as soon as if he shows some signs of life, that might be the time to move him then if somebody bites. But as like Godwin for the 110 to me is a guy who you're not going to be able to move for like more than the 110 in the future. So if we're just looking for value here, I think you did probably Godwin's probably your guy now, unless you're going to blow the thing up at some point and see what you get. I don't think you're going to be able to move him for more than the 110 at this point.
Right.
With Antonio Gibson, that's the thing with like if you got some ceiling chasing going on here. If Antonio Gibson reaches the ceiling and actually starts to fulfill this hype that we've heard so much about over the last few years, you're probably not going to want to move him at that point, right?
Yeah, right. He's only 24, very, very low miles on the legs. This is only his third year in the league.
Yeah.
So, yeah, low time. If he does start playing well, I mean that would be something I would like to, say move into the top 3 of the rookie draft next year. Hopefully, see that I like the construction of this team. I'm just very, very scared of floors, of injuries. I can't have any of these guys get hurt. I mean, if you look down at the bench, I've got backup running backs are Jaylen Warren, Donta Foreman, and Sean Tucker.
Yeah. Right.
Backup wide receivers are Odell Beckham and McCole Hardman. Van Jefferson maybe. We'll see if Michael Wilson. I've been praying that Michael Wilson is the second wide receiver in Arizona, and maybe Clayton Tune takes him to the next level. Same with John Mechie, but I've been trying to flip Mechie and Hodgins to anybody who's a believer, and unfortunately no one is at the moment.
So if we're as fluid as this roster is, I guess the strategy you're really taking here is just looking for value straight up, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, I think I would take the Godwin side here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only other one, maybe if Kincaid was there, was Kincaid there at the moment?
Kincaid and A-Chain went 8-9. So
okay, so Kincaid's not even there. So yeah, I think that's really the only guy because of that tight end position.
Yeah,
that I was kind of looking at and thinking maybe he would keep me from saying no to taking the Godwin side there.
Yeah, and this is a league with our friend Ian Snowdeal, another writer at our RSJ. Ian had 7 of the first 10 picks, so I had the forethought or at least the forewarning that Kincaid was not going to make it to me.
All right.
Before I made this pick.
Nice have. That might be insider trading though, so I don't know.
Well, that's all right. Ian's never. He'll never. He'll always stoop that low. He let him
know. So is this the? I noticed that we do have that going on with the next trade here. A lot. I mean, we can just dive right in unless you have anything else to add about this one.
We can just pull up the opposite trade. Team B here. Old team, but able to add Rashee Rice. A guy that's potentially flex play this season. Just depends on what happens in Kansas City. He needed to get younger, and the addition of that first round pick, and it's the allure of it being a first round pick is sort of what helped him in that and to get this deal done.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm still not sure if I would do that on this side though, just because there's a question of if you're an aging contender, when do you really go all in and stop trying to salvage the future?
Right.
So with this team, in the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League, we have Jackson, who had traded away Amari Cooper and was offering to trade away somebody else. I can't remember, but he said he had too many starters. He's a very comfortable contender, and if I'm a contender, I'm thinking depth is good because injuries happen. Maybe somebody flops and disappoints. If I'm contending for a championship, in theory, I'm going to want depth, right? So that was interesting for me to hear from Jackson's perspective, saying I have too many starters, and he wants to get, he ended up getting a 2026 first out of it, and a piece that he can use if he needs to go out and get depth if injuries hit or something like that. He could use that same first to go out and get depth, but he loses that uncertainty from not having Amari Cooper on the team now. So with this one, if you're trading for Rashee Rice, you got some older pieces. Like I know Ridley's like, it's weird that Calvin Ridley's 28, but he's 28. So age is a factor with Ridley already. Age is a factor with Russell Wilson, Aaron Jones. Madison might not be long-term. Michael Thomas, Calvin Ridley, Travis Kelce, Jamal Williams, Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon, Dalvin Cook. A lot of older vets. And so here's somebody who traded away another vet, really, who's in his prime, traded away depth in Chris Godwin, and ended up getting a receiver in Rashee Rice who could have a bright future, but this year I don't think he's going to contribute to any fantasy rosters this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an Andy Reid offense and it's complex, and Sky Moore. Trying to hold off a sneeze here, but Sky Moore has been reported plenty that a reason that he didn't really come on his rookie year is because the Andy Reid offense is so complex, and rookie wide receivers really just don't come on in their rookie season in that style of offense. So transfer that same thing over to Rashee Rice, and now they've traded away a late first rounder for somebody who might not even contribute to the fantasy team on an aging contender this year, and I'm not sure that I would do that.
Yeah, I'm of the same boat, sort of. I think this guy, he finished fifth. He lost to that play-in game, and I believe he traded his first-round pick last year for Ayuk and Madison because he had Dalvin Cook, got the handcuff of Madison there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's basically all I had to say. I just wanted to highlight this other team here. We can get to the next trade, which does involve our good friend Ian Snowdeal. This trade happened on draft day, rookie draft day.
So first thing I'd like to bring up is our very own Jackson, who brings us the Dynasty Trade Value charts and is rolling us in the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League. He said the one we just talked about is easily the Godwin side, but he actually thinks that first trade for Mahomes is a tough one. He probably agrees, but so tough to trade Mahomes in a start 9 Superflex, which I get. I think, if we looked straight up, we don't have Jackson's Dynasty Trade Value charts in front of us right now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that one, that if we looked at the charts, that one would be like a probably on the 8 asset side. I feel like that one would be like not keep trade cut, where it's like, no, this one's going to have to be 2 Mahomes for these 8 assets.
Yeah, right.
Equal, but it's still an interesting comment, I think, from Jackson, that he probably agrees, but he wasn't really 100%. I'm pretty close to 100% taking the 8 asset trade there on the first one.
He's right. I mean, it is tough to trade Mahomes. It's even tougher to trade him in a 1 quarterback league, the last one I'm talking about, because I put him on the block last year, but in a 1 quarterback league with 10 guys, I mean, there are 10 quarterbacks that can start on any fantasy team. You get to Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, that sort of thing, and you'd still take that. You don't want to give up X amount of assets just for a 4-point bump every week.
Yeah.
So it's even harder to do that in single quarterback, but for Superflex, I mean, it gives you a little bit more wiggle room, but still insanely hard to do. That being said, I would still make the trade, but
yeah. We can move on to trade number 3
Yeah.
here. Because this is what you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
So here it is, very minor trade, but why
Yeah.
not? I think Rondale Moore doesn't really get talked about much
Yeah,
right now.
I thought this would be an interesting one to include because this one was also a draft day, like day of the third round trade here, where 304 was on the clock. The guy was looking to Ian didn't need like I said, he had 7 first round picks this year. He did not need multiple third round picks. So to consolidate that into one guy is pretty solid. And I think let me pull up who got taken in that the 304 and the 38 spot.
Okay. It might be here, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I can find it, but I can find it just quick right here.
Just to make it for sure thing. Because so this was, I don't know what all had to happen before Ian got 7 of the first round picks, but that was like
I'm sorry, I lied. Ian is the team that got the third round picks too. So
okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so he with those third round picks, he took Izzy Abanikanda. There it is. Yeah. And Jaden Reed, wide receiver, Green Bay.
So even more 2023 picks. So the 7 first rounders, 2 extra third rounders. So like I don't even, we could go through and see and count, how many rookies are on the squad now. But
and drafted Tank Bigsby in the second. Okay. So after all of this, Ian came away with Bijan Robinson, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Anthony Richardson, Devon A. Chain, Dalton Kincaid, Tank Bigsby, Keyshawn Butte, Izzy Abanikanda, then Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman. That was his entire haul from this last draft. He had traded quite literally everybody previous to this draft.
And as a result, you've got this was a really nice setup. And if we stick to Rondale Moore for 2/3,
yeah,
I think I'm taking the 2/3. If we just isolate Rondale Moore, I don't know that he really gets talked a lot about since he came out of the league, and there was a lot of hype about how Cliff Kingsbury might use him. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if it's really happening for this guy. So it's going to be Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown this year. Rondale is going to be no higher than the 3, and I don't know if he's ever going to be any higher than the 3. And so even if Arizona became like a real prolific offense, how much fantasy relevance does he have? And I don't off the top of my head know how well he produced if he was ever thrust into a wide receiver 2 role. But I just feel like there was like one real, he got like 13 targets or some shit, I think, his very first game. Yeah. As a rookie, and then nothing really after that. So I don't know that we're really going to see any kind of breakout kind of year from Rondale Moore. So you might as well, round 3 is dart throws. I'm good with taking 2/3 there, just strictly value. Not talking about roster construction or anything else, just strictly value. I think I'm taking the 2/3 there.
Yeah, last year Rondale Moore played in 7 full games, took 3 snaps in the 8th, but played 7 full games last year. He finished higher than the wide receiver 16 once, and he went wide receiver 78, 24, 34, 72, wide receiver 6 only because he had 92 yards and a touchdown, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 16 in those healthy stretches. So 3 games where he was at best a wide receiver 2. Outside of that, no real real contribution. He is, again, only 23 going into his age 24 season on an offense. He's only 5'7", though, just a tiny little guy. He's not much bigger, though. I mean, Michael Wilson is a pretty decent fit for this roster, especially if Kyler Murray comes back this year and plays, or if Caleb Williams comes in and gets a big-bodied guy that he can throw the ball to. I guess the only thing that I'm saying, to argue the Rondale Moore side, there have been flashes. Team C or Team D, I'm sorry, the one that got Rondale needs something to happen. This team finished in 6th place last year, missed the playoffs. This guy is also our least active trader. So something needs to happen here, and I been picking his brain about Dallas Goedert, maybe DK, maybe he's got Keenan Allen, maybe moving off of that, but it's an interesting and to pick up a guy that has proven in flashes that he can be a flex position player, especially with the aging roster that he's got there. It's not the worst, dice roll. I think I would rather have Rondale Moore over Izzy and Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if we put it that way, it was Izzy and Jaden Reed. It would have been nice to know who else might have been on the board.
I'll find out
at that point, but maybe I am taking Rondale there because it's tough because we don't know. We don't know the roles for even like say Dalvin Cook. He's here for 23, but is he here for 24? I don't know. Let's say he's not. We'll have to see how well Michael Carter does. Like he was pretty good his rookie year, but then his second year was such a down here. Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna. I think reports were kind of promising about him getting back into the groove this year. So we'll see. But I mean, Abanikanda might. I think Michael Carter is more fit for the RB2 role alongside Breece Hall with the Jets. But if Carter can't get his groove back, then that I think in 2024 you're looking at Izzy having the opportunity to come along and take over that role if he forms into it. Because I don't really know that like Michael Carter he was a good passing down back and a good pass blocker, I believe, coming out of college, and I don't know that Izzy really was, so he would have to form that. Mm-hmm. So there's a chance that Izzy might just be like the guy behind Breece Hall, where maybe the Jets bring in a guy who's a good receiving back and pass blocker to take over from Michael Carter if it doesn't work out with Carter. And then Izzy is essentially like an RB3 basically.
Right.
So, but I mean, there's a path for Izzy that's kind of there. There's a path for Jaden Reed. I think that's again kind of there, and there's a path for Rondale that's kind of there. So
yeah, I think that's the best way to put it too. I mean, just in my opinion, I would have rather taken the guy, and I think that's in the same sort of vein as me. Trading for Chris Godwin. Like the pick can do whatever. It's got a lot of promise pre-draft, but Chris Godwin has been there, done that, produced at every stop. Just to wrap up your thought there, the 304 where Izzy got taken. Following that was Bryce Young, Michael Wilson, C.J. Stroud, Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman, and Sam Laporta was the 310.
Bryce Young went 305?
Yes.
Wow.
Over Stroud, yeah. In a one quarterback league. Okay. There's no world where Bryce Young or CJ Stroud needed to get drafted in this league.
Yeah. All right. So I know I defer to you more in the 1 QB situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could have gotten Michael Wilson. Could have gotten Sam Laporta. I mean, you don't really need. He didn't need to get drafted, but he did have a lot of buzz. This is also, hindsight speaking here, especially now that we know what came out of those third round picks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't mind either trade. Obviously, I mean, Ian, the guy who got the third rounders there, he was just trying to clean house and get as much young talent in the building as possible. Throwing darts for he traded Rondale, a guy that is sporadic at best, for 2 dart throws, basically. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we go back. I suppose. Yeah, I mean, if you got Kincaid, he's got Okonkwo, got Hawkinson. So it's not like you needed Laporta. I think Laporta just, if we're talking about, if we want to go ceiling chasing, Sam Laporta has a more of a path than I think Jaden Reed or Rondell or Izzy. So maybe, if we're talking about plug myself in, what am I doing with those 2/3? Sam Laporta was probably one of those, probably the 304. Yeah. But it's close enough to where, Rondale Moore's hype was. It would have been nice to see. It would have been nice to see the Cliff Kingsbury scheme work out in Arizona.
Yeah,
what are you gonna do? So now all the Rondale Moore hype that was coming in with Cliff Kingsbury to be like, oh, he's going to be this gadget player and he's going to be used in such a variety of ways. Yeah, maybe somebody can rebirth that. We'll see, but I don't know that. I don't know who has the highest ceiling out of those 3: Rondell, Izzy, and Jaden. So I guess I would take quantity over quality there, just because of so much unknown and capped ceiling with these guys.
Yeah.
I think that's about all I got.
I'm right with you. This is a first for RSJ Dynasty Dive. It only took 11 episodes, but we are about to wrap at exactly an hour.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you breaking down these sort of positions here. It's always nice to get a second outside eye, and I do appreciate the people that reached out on Twitter and sent us some trade stuff. Keep doing that, please. It'll be nice to talk about my dynasty teams all the time, but I mean, we don't have to do that.
Right.
I can pull from old leagues, but I don't want to do that. It's great to have the engagement out there with everybody. And so it was Cole, correct? Cole sent in the tweet.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you again for doing that, my friend. And yeah, let's keep this up. I do like the idea of maybe breaking down a quick little trade at the beginning of each episode.
Right. I do. I definitely, I don't mind anything about being an unbiased third party looking at league completely strange to me. Just even for my own, like assessing my own values too. I think there's value in that. So, in the future here, if you guys got some more trade questions you want to throw at us at RSJ Dynasty Dive, definitely here for it. And that's a wrap from me. Any closing words, Emery?
No, thank you guys again.
All right, and we will see you next time.